So this is a joy hour where I talk with people I've interviewed and known over the years, and two of my favorite fashion legends I have tonight. And the first was Neal Hamil.
Hi.
Hi, and Neal is Neal has done everything, but he's been one of the leading modeling agents in the world. In the world, and board models, elite models. Yeah. You started your own agency twice. Yeah, and it just, and you know everybody.
No, you know everybody.
No, you know everybody. And then we have Michael Quintanilla, the man with the best hair in the world.
I'm so bitter.
Okay? So Michael is in San Antonio, and he is the former fashion editor at the Los Angeles Times and the San Antonio Express News. We work together. Well, I don't know if we talked.
Yeah, we did.
And we've always wanted to collaborate on something. He was my tour guide when I went to San Antonio for my little mini book tour with my dog.
I love that. I love doing that with you.
So it's wonderful to have you both.
Good to be here.
Yeah. So okay. So just tell me how are you doing? What are you doing, Neal? How have you been during the pandemic?
I've been super busy. So I sold so much real estate even during the heavy duty lockdown. I sold a house for a doctor and I sold a house to a doctor. Neither one of them was terribly nervous about being around each other or me or whoever else. But
oh, really? Oh, wow.
You know, it's so weird. Real estate wise, I've never been busier. I've sold a bunch of real estate during this time, and it's been bizarre. But there was
when did you make the pivot into real estate?
It'll be 5 years in December.
Oh, wow.
It's they're very similar businesses. You know, they're service industries. They're commission-based income. So you're selling models, you're selling properties. But the thing I like about the properties is they never miss a plane. They don't talk back. They don't wake up hungover. Because that's enough of that.
All right, Michael, what have you been doing during this pandemic besides having the most fabulous hair?
Right.
I've been making my hats, and I did something really cool. I designed a frame last night because I'm buying a beautiful print from a friend that I'm picking up tomorrow, and so I customized this really cool frame. I bought this frame at Target, Joy, and I decorated it with roses. But let me show it to you.
Okay. So he makes these fabulous like hats for oh wow, look at that.
Oh, that's cool.
So what is it made out of?
They're these really cool, I call them fondant roses. So I just glued them on, and they're different shapes and different sizes, and so the print is these colors. It's going to look really cool. And then I've been making the Fiesta hats, though I don't think we're going to have Fiesta, so which is good. I think it's going to be postponed or canceled, which is okay because of the pandemic, right? Well, you know what's happening in Texas, so
yes.
Yeah.
So tell people, what is Fiesta?
Fiesta is an 11-day hedonistic good time where we celebrate the culture in San Antonio. So we do 3 parades. Actually, it's four or five parades, and Night in El San Antonio, which is like you drink and you eat and you celebrate the culture, the many cultures in San Antonio.
And you make those hats for Fiesta, is that right?
Yeah, I'm making these what I call Fiestanators that are being sold at the official Fiesta store. So
Fiestanators, that's so clever.
Yeah. They're like fascinators, but they're Fiestanators, and they're huge and they're big. Joy has seen them.
They're fascinators with a little flavor.
Fiesta flavor.
That's right.
Flavor.
Michael, when did you retire from fashion, being a fashion editor?
Gosh, I think it's been, has it been maybe 4 or 5 years now, Joy? I think about
okay.
that long because yeah, maybe 4 years. Yeah, something
Okay.
like that. Because
Okay.
you mentioned how we were working. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
Well, no, we were working.
He's frozen.
But Joy and I were working together when the Houston, when her, remember that?
Michael, I
Am
didn't
I
hear
there?
any of that. I didn't hear
Can
any
you
of
hear
it.
me? Hello?
Okay.
Now, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Remember when Hearst decided, because the Express News and the Chronicle, the Houston Chronicle, are both owned by Hearst, and
Yeah.
they decided we were going to share content. That's how Joy and I became familiar with each other.
Sure.
We were talking on the phone and seeing each other at New York Fashion Week, and she'd be calling me, I'd be calling her from either Dillard's or
Yeah.
Neiman Marcus or whatever. What are you working on? What are you working on? Well,
What are you working on? Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
yeah, so we had a lot of fun at the time.
Okay, so tell me both, you were in the fashion game and have been at like 30 plus years
Yeah.
each, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That is amazing. So, and I don't even know where to start. I mean, we could start from the beginning, but I really want to, what do you miss about the fashion world, or, what was the most exciting part for you?
At first, the most exciting part was working with super famous people, because that's a whole other world. And it was really fun doing all the travel, because I had to travel with a lot of my clients. And
all right, now you got to drop names. Who did you work with? Okay, drop some names.
Oh gosh, well, Naomi Campbell, which
Naomi
Veronica Webb, Adriana Lima, Gwyneth Paltrow. I did a big deal, one deal for her. That was really fun. It's a great story.
We have to hear, we want to hear stories.
I had a bunch of Victoria's Secret girls, contract girls. I had most, at one point, most of them. And then I had all the cosmetics contracts from Revlon, Maybelline, CoverGirl, Almay, a lot of girls under contract to other beauty brands, hair brands. And I always liked the pretty, sexy girls. That was kind of my
sexy girls. Okay,
pretty
Neal,
sexy girls.
I see you.
Yes,
Okay.
and I will just get this out of the way. To this day, people ask me who the most beautiful of them all, like the most beautiful woman. And I say, every time I'm asked this, I really think about it. And my answer has never changed, and that's Naomi. She's the most physically perfect human being I have ever seen. And I've seen her completely naked many times. I've slept in the same bed with her a few times, Yes, I've slept with Naomi Campbell. And she's so perfect. I mean, she's just the most exquisitely beautiful, perfect. Everything about her, her body is in perfect proportion. Her face, her eyes are the same shape, and they're, where they're supposed to be. And it's just, there's so many things that go into it. Ron Perlman used to call me up and say, I want a new girl for Revlon. We're going to launch this product or that product. And so I need a perfect eye. So I pull all the girls, pull all the pictures that had focused on their eyes. And it just becomes that specific, sitting down.
The perfect eye.
The perfect eye. And the perfect eye is several things. And one, when you're casting for a beauty campaign for an eye color, there has to be a lot of lid to paint on, right?
Okay.
So it just becomes very.
I don't have, but go ahead.
You can have some of mine because I've gotten so old. They're like falling down in my soup. But it just becomes very, very, very specific, and because of the truth in advertising laws that changed a great deal, they can't Photoshop like they used to, and they shouldn't.
Right.
Particularly anti-aging, and this is where Oil of Olay got sued in Great Britain for over retouching, over Photoshopping.
Sure.
And I absolutely agree. I'm glad they didn't call me to speak in the case, because I would have said, yeah, it's so it's so ridiculous that no one's gonna buy $12 thing of skin of anti-aging and look 20 years younger. It doesn't happen.
No.
You can look 20 years younger, but it ain't gonna happen at CVS, okay? That's gonna happen at Dr. Stephen Hamilton's office.
A shameless plug.
Well, he's the only person I'd ever let touch my face. Every Christmas, I'd go to this Christmas party, and every Christmas they, okay, Stephen, is it my year? And he's like, we're getting there.
All right. Okay, Michael.
Yes.
All right. And you know, you were a journalist side. So you were behind the scenes, you were interviewing, you were asking questions, but you also did a lot of rubbing shoulders with some famous people.
Yes.
What was the most fun time for you?
Oh my gosh. Well, when I was at the LA Times and I was there for 15 years, I loved it when I came in one day and my editor said, well, how would you like to have the party beat? And I said, hell yes. So, you know, what was happening is a few of us at the paper were taking turns doing the party beat because we learned that the New York Times was scooping us on Hollywood party stories that were important. So, you know, it's like, Hollywood is in our backyard. So, you know, we need to cover this stuff. So I was going to the launch of a pajama line by Jennifer Aniston, like for Target, you know.
Wait,
like
she had a pajama line at Target?
She had something like that, like long time ago. And I don't know if it was Target, but it was something like that, right?
Okay.
So I was going to all these things. And then with the internet, like there were all these cool launch parties for for games. So we would, because there was always a celebrity attached to it. And then it came time to go cover all of the great red carpet events, Neal and Joy. And so that's what I really loved. You mentioned Gwyneth Paltrow and things like that, celebrities like that. So that was the most fun. I love to do that. So oh my gosh, yes, I have like 7 tuxedos in my closet, you know, because I was ready. I went to the Golden Globes, I went to the Oscars and to the Emmys. And the great thing was that you would go and you would get your spot, and it was a spot like the size of a paper plate, right? But you had to be parked there for like 5 hours, and then you would cover it, and then you'd come in and write your story, and you speak to the celebrities. It was so much fun. And then after that, then you'd write the piece, and then you'd go to the parties, and that was a lot of fun too, because then because you were dressed, right? So they figured, well, you're in a tuxedo, so now let's go cover the parties. And not just the parties, but the after parties. So I wouldn't get home till like maybe 4 in the morning, you know. But that was my choice because I wanted to party.
Is that when you crashed Diana Ross's birthday party?
Yeah. Yes, it wasn't just her birthday party. It was an Oscar party that we were invited to. So here's the story. So we were invited to cover the Oscar party at Spago's in West Hollywood, off Sunset Boulevard, up on the hill, the famous Spago's in West Hollywood. We had RSVP'd, we were invited. So I showed up and I wasn't allowed in. They said, no, I wasn't on the clipboard. This was back in the day when the PR person had a clipboard at the door, right? Nowadays it's the cell phone, you know, people are there with the cell phone and
the iPad, yeah, the iPad.
Oh, yes, the iPad. Is it the iPad now? And so anyway, it's like she wouldn't let me in, and I don't know why. And when I think about it now, Joy, oh no, it says my internet is unstable. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Mine does that too. Mine does that too.
So, but you know what? I was thinking about this the other day, and I tend to think that maybe she didn't let me in because I'm Latino. So I was thinking straight. I don't know. I think about it now because we were RSVP'd. I couldn't get in. I knew a photographer who had a freelance photo agency, Alex Berliner. He had to go outside to get some equipment in his car. And he said, Michael, what are you doing out here? I said, she won't let me in. He said, follow me. We went in through the kitchen in the back.
It was Diana Ross's kitchen?
No. This was at Spago's.
Oh, Spago's. I'm sorry.
So it was the kitchen. It was like it was like a scene out of a movie. So we sneak in through the he knew Spago's well. He says, let's go in through the back. So we went in through the kitchen, and so we go in through the back door. You see all the kitchen workers. I mean, they're cooking, they're setting plates, all of that stuff. He says, get behind this cart, right? Because these waiters were like rolling in a cart. There was this giant Oscar. There was this giant Oscar on a big cake. He says, get behind that one. And so he's walking really fast. They're rolling it in. I don't know what's going on, but I need to get into the party. These big doors swing open into the main restaurant. They swing open, and all of a sudden everybody starts singing happy birthday. So, you know, I pop up, I start singing. I don't know who we're singing to. And I'm going, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear. And then I see Diana Ross, and I go, happy birthday, dear Diana. Happy birthday to, it was Diana Ross's 50th birthday
Oh,
on Oscar night.
Wow.
So that was my story. And
Wow.
so then the PR lady sees me, and she comes over to me and she says, how did you get in here? And I said, look, I was invited. I need to cover this party. I need to write a story. I'm making my deadline. If you don't want me here, throw me out. But if you throw me out, this is the lead to my story. And then she left me alone. And then
There
I
you
went
go.
up.
There you go.
I went up to Diana Ross.
There you go. All right.
I said, I had to fight to get in here, bitch. You know, before I was known to all the backstage people, when I was, I used to have to go to the collections in Europe twice a year. So 6 weeks and then 6 weeks, the whole tour. And so I had to get backstage because I had some established girls, stars, and then some new up and coming girls. And never a problem in London, never a problem really in Paris, but Milan, for some reason, that's the weirdest place. Anyway,
Is it
for some
really?
reason, I always had a hard time, and I would show my business card, and those guys would just be like, so one day I was like, I need a trick to get in these backstages. So I went to the drugstore, and I was like, the feminine hygiene aisle. And I bought a couple boxes, and I put them in the bag, and I would go back to the backstage door, and I would say, before you start, let me just explain something to you. You know, I'm a model agent from Ford Models in New York, and one of my girls called me because I need to deliver something to her. And I would open the bag, and they would go, Madonna, please, go, please, go in. Or I'd say, unless you want to deliver them to her. Oh, no. And you know what? It worked.
That's good.
It worked many times.
That's good. That's good.
And then I got established, and they knew me, so I didn't have to do that anymore.
Well, so, okay, Neal, I have a question. How did you get, I know you had the agency, you started here, Neal Hamil Models.
Yeah.
Well, how did you get into this business at all? I mean, and how and why?
Well, I still wonder why, but in 1976, a girl at my high school named Minette Chasnoff used to tell me, you should be a model, you should be a model. I didn't even know what a model was. I paid no attention. So I said, if you'll go with me to whatever, however you do, she goes, you go to an agency, you idiot. And, you know, I said, well, you make the appointment where you think I should go, and you go with me and I'll go. And so we went to, at that time, the big agency here was called Ben Shaw.
Okay.
And the office was on Lower Westheimer, across the street from where La Strada used to be, in an old house.
Right.
And that was that day of my appointment. Ben Shaw, I didn't know this, of course, would have no way of knowing this, had cancer, and he was very sick that day. So his business partner came down the stairs. His name was Barry Horn, and he signed me right there. And then my very first booking was a fashion show at Neiman Marcus in the Galleria.
Oh, wow.
And I had no idea what I was doing, none whatsoever. But Dallas Hill was a model in that show. And when it came,
I remember that name.
yes. And when it came my turn, she literally shoved me out there, and I was like, oh my God. So then like a couple months later, Wilhelmina Cooper, who owned Wilhelmina, and her husband, Bruce Cooper, who produced The Tonight Show, were in Houston, and she was scouting. And she invited me to New York. And so I went to New York right after I graduated. And my third night there, I got in a taxi, and I asked the cab driver if he knew where Studio 54 was. And he's like, of course I know. So we pull out.
Oh, I don't know. What is Studio 54? No idea.
There was this massive crowd of people. And so I just said, just pull up, just keep going, stop here, right in front. I mean, there was like 400 people between me and the front door. And just as I'm getting out of the cab, the front door opens and this little head pops out. And it was Steve Rubel. And he goes, him. And he pulled me through, and he threw me in the door, and he goes, I'm Stevie. Who are you? And I said, I'm Neal. And he said, where are you from? And I said, Texas. And he said, oh my God, I think I'm going to faint. And I was like, really? Why? And he's like, you just whatever. Anyway, so he gave me a special card and introduced me to all the managers and everything. And he said, you have carte blanche here, and you're my guest whenever you're here.
Studio 54.
And Lord have mercy.
That's like the golden ticket. You had like
Golden.
the golden ticket.
Oh,
Yes.
I met everybody. And I mean, it was so much fun. But one day, pretty soon after, I hated modeling because you would sit all day. We didn't have cell phones. You had to bring a book. And you'd be booked for 8 hours. And you'd sit there and maybe work 30 minutes of 8 hours because your shots were taken like that. And so you're just sitting there and be like, this is the dumbest job. This is mindless. This is so stupid.
Dumbest job.
I can't even believe I'm here. And so I went in the agency and I said, I don't want to model anymore. I want to be an agent. And
Oh, okay.
that morning, an agent had quit. And they said, you really want to be an agent? And I'm like, yes, I hate modeling. This is the stupidest, I hate it. And they said, well, sit down and answer that phone. And the weird thing is that when I sat down and answered the phone, it was Neiman Marcus from Dallas, Texas, calling to book models. I mean, how weird.
Oh, wow.
And that's how it started.
Wow.
It's fun.
That's amazing. That's
It was
amazing.
Fun. Oh, God, it was so much fun.
You know, Neal, Joy, may I say something? Neal said
Sure.
something that triggered a beginning for me, and that was when I was at the LA Times. I was walking past my editor's office, and she said, hey, come on in. I have a really cool assignment for you. And I said, sure, what is it, Michelle? And she said, well, it begins really soon, like in a couple of weeks. You start in New York, and then you go to Milan and to Paris. And I said, oh my God, it's covering the shows? And she said, yeah. And I said, why do you want to send me? And she says, because I want to send someone who's curious. I want to send a reporter. I don't want to send a fashion writer.
Sure.
That's what she told me. And so she was making changes at the time. And I said, okay, I can do that. So then I walked to my desk. And you mentioned Neiman Marcus because I knew a gentleman, the general manager at Neiman Marcus in Beverly Hills, because I'd like to go there and just browse. Not that I could afford anything, but my editor then, Michelle, said, don't worry about it. Don't sweat it. You probably give yourself more credit. You know a lot about fashion. You just don't sweat it. So I called Mr. Martin and I told him about this really cool new assignment. And he said, Michael, come on over. He says, I want you to come like every night until it's time for you to go. And I'm going to teach you. He became my first mentor, Joy, Neal.
Wow.
So
that is amazing.
What a break.
After work, I'd leave the LA Times and I'd drive to Beverly Hills, and we would go through all the collections at Neiman Marcus. And he would say, like, touch the fabric. I want you to feel this. This is boiled wool. This is, this is this designer's aesthetic. This is this designer's silhouette. And go home and then read about it. And then he gave me the Fairchild Dictionary of Fashion. I'm going to get you a book. And he gave it to me and I packed it. This is all you need to take with you. And you study it and you take it with you. And he says, don't worry about a thing. He says, if you need something, you call me. And that was my immersion into fashion. Once I got there, you know, my editor said, don't worry about the runway or anything like that. Go to the shows, enjoy them, write what you see. But mostly go backstage, like what you were talking about, Neal. Like, how do you get backstage and you talk to the people and you see the people sitting in the front row, see what they're doing. Yeah.
Exactly.
And you know, and so I got to meet the what were called, Joy, you know, the regional reporters, you know, from other cities, you know, like the US. And then they would go, there was a group of them back then. This was in the 90s, and from other major cities across the US and mid-sized cities. There was a group of women. And so when I was at the LA Times, there's the Washington Post and then the New York Times. Those are the three major papers. We always got great seats, right? Because we were big, and the Houston Chronicle. And I forget the woman from the Houston Chronicle. Then was her name Kathy? But anyway,
Linda.
Linda, yes. What was her last name? Linda.
Yeah. Linda Griffin Gilliam.
Yes.
Gilliam.
Yes.
Griffin.
And so
Gilliam Griffin. Yeah.
These were the papers that we were always lucky that we got great seats, right? But the other ladies, not so much lucky. But they were so good. There was this one woman I remember from the Cincinnati paper. She had every color of magic marker in her handbag because she was a pro at taking an invitation and turning a letter into an A for the best section.
Let me tell.
And turning a number into a 1 so you could sit in row A, seat 1, right?
Yes.
So you always had a front row seat.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I went to my first show, and I think the first New York Fashion Week, I think was 2004 or 5, I went to, and there was a group of journalists, regional journalists, who African American, who kind of befriended me, and we were all. It was weird, but it's still very segregated, but even as 2004 5, and they would tell me. So at the time, they would give at Bryant Park index cards with your seat assignment on it.
Yes.
Well, we would bring extra index cards. So then we would find the right pen, and then because if we didn't like our seat, we had an extra index card. Like, this is it. We got it here. Here it is.
I love it.
It's so true. Oh my gosh. And then all the times you would like get standing room only, and you were like way up.
No.
Like, no. Like how can you do your job? It's so frustrating, right? How can you do your job when you're like row 30, standing room, and
exactly. It's ridiculous.
Who are all these people here? Why? We're working. And then there were so many people there that were just there for fun. And I get it. I get it. When you're working, that's not how you're supposed to. I mean, come on.
You are so 100% right. And you know, when it started becoming a circus, and it became a social event, and it became a CNBC
and an influencer and thing too.
It drove me absolutely stark raving mad, because I'm like, we are working here.
Yeah,
we're working here, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And you people are just a bunch of goofballs, and it really sent the PR team for each designer into complete and utter madness. And they were clacking around and working those clipboards overtime.
Yep.
And you try to go backstage. Sometimes I needed to get backstage to get a girl out the door and into the car to go to the next show. And Kristen McMenemy. And if I didn't do it, she'd stay backstage and and have a party and so I had a purpose for being back there, and sometimes I just stayed backstage and was like, I'm just gonna have to be right here and grab her or whoever. You know, I had some girls that didn't cooperate so well. Trust me.
Can you name some names?
Well, she's one, Kristen.
Okay.
Naomi didn't always cooperate. Oh no.
Can I give my Naomi story? I have a Naomi story.
Yeah, tell it.
Okay, so she came to Houston.
Yeah.
And I interviewed her at Hotel Derrick.
Right.
And I don't even know why she was here, but she came to Houston.
She was here because IMG was launching a fashion tour across America.
Oh, yes.
At Highland Village.
Yes.
In the parking lot.
Yes, it was called Fashion Live or something like that. Anyway, so she was here, and they had just sent us out with these new digital recorders. This is just when digital recorders were booming.
Right.
I had this new one. I did not know really how to work it. And so we were sitting there, and I'm fumbling, and I'm like, okay, I think it's got it on. And so I set it down, and she's like, here, let me. And she takes the recorder, and she says,
throw it at you?
No. She says, you have to turn the power button on. And then she hands it back. I'm
Mic
like,
drop.
like, damn.
You know, when she was here for that event, Becca called me in New York, and she said, Becca Case and Thrash, and she said, I'm going to give a dinner party for Naomi while she's in town, and I want you to come down for it. And I said, well, first of all, don't do that. And she said, don't do it. I'm like, no, do not do that. Well, why do you say that? I said, I managed her for a long time. Save yourself. Just don't do it. And she's like, no, I'm going to give a big
Don't do it, girl. Don't do it, girl.
House and all this. And I said, you'll regret it. So I flew down to just hold Becca's hand, basically. And it's like the cocktails at 7, dinner at 8, you know, and everyone's all, you know, dressed up. And I called Naomi and I said, this is Houston, and 6 means 6, and 7 means 7, and 8 means 8:15, because we're drinking now. And don't be late. You will get absolutely ripped to shreds. People do not put up with that here. And so 7 o'clock cocktail hour rolls around, 7:15, 7:30. Becca is like,
livid.
I told you not to do this in the first way. And she's like, you have to call her. I said, let me explain something else. The more I bug her, the slower she's going to move. So if I call her, listen, you tell me when you want me to make the one call that I'll call her one time. So you just let me know when you want me to do that. And I don't think we should be doing that before about 8:30 probably.
Oh no.
And so 8:30 comes around, and oh my gosh, she's having a meltdown. And I said, again, I told you not to do this, bad idea. So I call, and it goes straight to voicemail, and I'm like, oh, Missy is mad. So I said, Becca, call the driver you hired call him and ask him. So she calls, and I said, and if he says she's in the car, you hand me the phone. So she's like, it's Mrs. Thrash, and I would just like to know if Miss Campbell is in the car. And the minute he paused, I'm like, the bitch is in the car, and she has told him, don't say I'm here. So it went like that, and finally he said, I'm lost. And I'm like, lost? You're coming from the Hotel Derrick to Memorial Drive in Chimney Rock? And he's like, yes, I'm lost. And so I said, look up and tell me where you are. Mm-hmm. And he can't tell me. And I'm like, he's sitting right in front of that hotel. That car has not moved an inch.
Oh no.
I know that game.
You know the game. You know the game.
Geez. So anyway, I said, she'll get here when she gets here. And she's like, oh my God, but when is that going to be? And I was like, well, it's 8:30 now, so maybe 9:30. 9:30! Told you not to do this. And so Naomi finally arrives, and the only person she will talk to is me.
Oh, real? Oh my God.
She told Becca, no, I'm going to sit by him. He's the only person here I know. I'm the only person she spoke to.
Wow.
And I leaned over and I said, this is not okay. This dinner cost her like $40,000. You got to be nice. And you got to meet people. And she goes, you go bring anyone that you think I should meet. You go get them and bring them over here to me.
Oh.
Like, oh my God. You know I don't work for
you.
you.
So she really is a diva.
Diva.
She is a diva.
Yeah.
With a capital A.
You know I don't work for you anymore.
Okay, so I have a question about just the industry, and you know, it has changed so much since I've been covering fashion, which is probably about 16, 18 years. What has been the biggest changes for you, that you've seen in your experience, both of you? Neal first. Okay, Michael.
Michael?
Michael,
Oh,
hello.
okay, I thought Neal was gonna speak.
No,
I think the biggest change for me is the way the news media has been treated in the industry when we were covering the shows. It just seemed that with the advent of influencers and bloggers, I remember that you mentioned that a while ago. I remember the time, maybe you remember this, Joy, also, remember when bloggers all of a sudden were taking over the first 3 rows at shows? I mean, and then newspaper reporters were, delegated to other seats where it became a little bit more difficult to see the fashions as they were coming down the runway. And it's not so much that, that I had to have a better seat because I was a reporter, but a better seat just to see the garments coming down the runways, to have a better idea of what to write about, to get a better view. And I think that was a big change. And then when editors also, because of the advent of the internet and smartphones and the capability of what smartphones could do, what laptops could do, we were all then we're blogging, not just writing a story to make a deadline. Okay, so now between shows, let's do a blog post,
A video,
let's do a video,
a photo gallery.
let's do a photo gallery,
Yeah.
and then you had to get to the next show and take notes, and then you had to go at some point write a wrap-up story for the next day's deadline for a deadline for the next day's story, right? I mean, there was just a lot of stuff happening. And then you also had to take pictures as stuff was coming on the runway. And then you had to write interesting tidbits about people at the show. You had to do little mini interviews with designers. If you saw, I remember when guys started wearing high heels to the shows. Remember that, Joy? When we would see guys wearing heels, that was like a big trend. It was like, let's do a story on all these guys that are wearing heels and go talk to them. That would take valuable time away. I had to skip shows, and then I had to skip
guys
shows to
in
talk to
heels.
guys who were wearing stilettos, which was fun. But you had to miss, you had to miss Michael Kors.
not when you want to miss. I agree with what Michael said. I think one of the biggest changes was in fashion, the shows becoming theater, an event outside of the business. It moved way past the boundaries of buyers from department stores, important media, that people were expert and could talk about what they're seeing on the runway and what it means, and to bloggers and vloggers and influencers and goofy celebrities, and it really changed it. And I'm just gonna say it, for the worse. I don't think it.
I think we all can agree to that.
Okay.
I think we all can agree.
All my my friends that are influencers and bloggers and all that stuff. I'm not dissing them. There's a lot of things you can write about. And you know what? Some people have really expressed, developed a natural talent, just like you two are naturally talented at writing and at being, as being journalists. That's a gift. You can study it all you want. There's only a few of you that are really good at it, that get the story, that brings something unique, because I think when you're on a press tour with a celebrity client, and they're going to sit for 4 hours in a hotel suite and just do one interview after another. The first celebrity that I kind of got close to and worked with was Eileen Ford. And she used to say, if a reporter said to her, "Tell me how you started the Ford agency," she would literally flash and she'd say, "How can you goddamn dare ask me such a stupid question? You have surely read that somewhere. And if that's all you have, get up." I want to talk to a journalist who came here to, but I will tell you, I think that the whole mass media and social media did a lot of good for fashion, did a lot of bad for fashion in another way. And then, of course, models changing. Celebrities pushed models off the covers of magazines.
Sure.
And then we had a total renaissance of what beauty meant, what beauty looks like, what beauty represents, what I mean, it became important. These were not just mannequins anymore with kind of waxy skin and, you know, blonde hair and blue eyes. And the clients started looking for something deeper in a model. And now my friend Paige Parks tells me the first thing that the people look at on the casting side is how many social media followers, how many Instagram followers these models have. And some of them have huge. I represented Coco Rocha at Elite. We started her. She was the first girl to ever be a model, to ever be on Twitter. I was like, what the hell is Twitter? And she's like, she said to me one day, this is the future. And I'm telling you that just watch. And like immediately she had like 150,000 followers. And then she had 1.5 million followers and then 15 million followers. And so we quickly learned that there is a value, a dollar value to that audience. And we started representing people that had that stock in trade, you know, that value. And it changed advertising, you know, and people who have a story to tell. I mean, Paige Parks told me recently that when she is taking on a new client or she's promoting a new client, she wants to know what their story is and what and fine tune their ability to tell it. And you tell that story in a lot of different ways. There's a young African-American male model named Alton Mason. You guys know who he is?
I don't know.
Alton Mason, he's huge Instagram.
Yes.
And he's really beautiful. Like he's very pretty, but he has a great story. I mean, his backstory is one, you know, it's a rag to riches thing and people love that. And then Joy knows this. I recently sort of came out of retirement, and I put that in brackets because I got so inspired by a young man here in Houston whose name is Jimmy Burner. He's not only he's so beautiful, it's unbelievable, but he's really smart. He writes and performs his own music. He's a fashion designer. Everything he does is sustainable and upcycling fabrics and everything. The kid is he's just, and the most beautiful soul. I mean, the first time I met him, I was like, who is this guy? I mean, he's like an angel. Doesn't have a mean bone in his body, puts nothing but good out into the world. So
he was just on my list. I just did a list of
up and comers.
Designers, and he was on my list.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
The kid is just, he's not really a kid, but he's so inspiring. So there you go. He has this great story to tell about his life and who he is today. It's just, I'm obsessed with him. And sometimes I just call him and say, we need to meet for lunch and go over some things because I just want to sit and talk to him.
Well, you know what? Yeah, what I find is, and I said this on my Zoom last week, is that everybody has a story to tell, and it's how they if they're able to tell you their story, because that's what I'm looking for when I'm writing something. And I know Mike will probably say the same thing, but I want to do a quick pivot because I'm fascinated that Michael, during 9/11, and I don't know if people know this, during 9/11, he was covering the shows. He stopped, everything stopped, and he pivoted and went and covered 9/11. Everything. Wow. Yes. Was that for LA Times or for San Antonio?
Yes, that was for the LA Times.
LA Times.
Booth Moore and I there were two of us covering the shows then. And the night before we were at the Marc Jacobs show, and it was like, we were at this lavish party on one of the piers. And then we got an estimate. It was like a $1.1 million event that night. Remember, we were partying with Linda Evangelista, Debbie Harry, Hilary Swank was there, you know, the usual big Hollywood models and all that kind of stuff. We left like about 1 or 2 in the morning with a goodie bag filled with perfume and so much body lotion. You know, we went back to the hotel and went to bed. And then we got a phone call the next morning from our editor saying, you know, we weren't awake yet, but she says, you guys need to get up because something horrible has happened at the World Trade Center. And so we got up, and of course, you know, the towers were coming down, and we had pressed, and they said, y'all need to get up and go down there. And then we were sent actually to the New York, to our bureau, and we just started hitting the streets. So later that day, I went and babysat the morgue. We went into hospitals, and then we actually were all over the place in New York. We actually went to the site, but then they told us to come back to retreat. We were just sending in information all day long. And it was late at night. We went back to the hotel, said get some rest because tomorrow's going to be another busy day. So we pivoted straight into just news reporting. Went to bed, and then we got a phone call from our New York bureau chief, Drex Hikes, who said, Michael, sorry to do this to you, but one of you need to go back. We're thinking one of you need to go back. And we did have some people working there in the bureau, but they had assignments for the next day. They said, since you and Booth are here, one of you need to go back to the World Trade Center site, because what if they do find someone alive overnight? So he said, okay, not a problem. So I told Booth, and we said, we both said, let's do this together. We're in this together. Let's go together. We got dressed. We paid some guy with a little cab on a bicycle to drive us as close as he could to the area. And we just started walking. They hadn't sectioned anything off with fencing or anything yet. And we were just walking around everywhere. And we were in it, like right where everything was. You know, that I'm reminded of that jarring structure that was coming up out of the ground, this angry piece of building, the structure with the steel metal coming up that looked so angry. We were walked right in front of it. I see that image all the time. And we stayed there overnight. We just walked and walked. We phoned in details to the night editor. And then the next day, the next morning, our instructions were just to stay there and to stay there and to stay there. And I think
you stayed there 2 weeks, didn't you?
Yeah, something like that. But at that moment, I think we stayed there for 2 days until we could finally go back to the hotel. And then we went back. So the next day we were able to get on top, get inside the area and on top, and where the 2 piles of rubble were. Booth went in with some guardian angels. She just like went in with them. They said, come on in. And then I saw this young guy walking out, and I remember his name is Jason Rodriguez. He had collapsed to his knees. I went over to him and I said, look, here's some bottled water. My name's Michael Quintanilla. I'm gonna tell you, I'm Michael Quintanilla. I'm with the LA Times. Take my bottled water. Can I get you anything? Can I help you with anything? He says, can I help you? What do you want to do? And he looked up at me and he says, do you want to go in? And I said, yes, I want to go in. He said, let's go. So I followed him in. He took me in, and then we just kind of I lost him, but he wanted to take me. He said, I want to take you where I found a woman folded in half. I want to take you to that spot. And that's where we went. And it was just the most important story of my life. And you know, and I've been talking to friends who are covering the pandemic as you've been, Joy, you know, you know, in your own way, like from pandemic to protest, right?
Yeah,
and
right.
Like this is the most important story of your career right now. And so just like 9/11 was my story. And it just, you know, it's one of these milestones in our journalistic career that we'll never forget. And
you know, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
You know, I met Neal shortly after 9/11 because I think it was, it might have been it was really close around that time because we met somewhere and it was still a lot of destruction and stuff around. Yeah. All right, so we're actually running out of time, and I could talk to you all for hours.
Me too, you. And you.
Because we just scraped the surface with all of the stories.
True.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so Neal, your favorite of all time model, you mentioned Naomi. Okay, who's underneath there?
Well, I never represented her, but Linda Evangelista is the model's model.
she's the one, she's the chameleon who can go in different hairs. Yes.
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 How tall is she, Neal? How tall?
Tall.
She's tall, right?
Yeah.
Tall.
She's not 5'10" or something like that, you know.
Yeah.
Wow.
Naomi's 5'10" and a half, but she's just a model's model.
Yeah.
And you know, Christy Turlington looks like no one else.
Yeah. I did an interview with her at here when she was in town, and she is an interesting looking face. She has it's very
Kind of
wayfish, but it's very interesting, you know.
Very much so, and no one looks like her. And
No.
but I know when she was here, her PR people or her agent in LA said, don't ask her questions about modeling because she doesn't like to talk about modeling.
She didn't want to talk about exactly. I was like, wait a minute, that's how you're here.
Thank you. She refused to ever talk. She hated doing press.
Yeah.
And she would say, people would ask her about modeling or her agency. And one time Eileen, she never once ever said, you know, Ford Models or Eileen Board. And Eileen asked her one time, she said, this company says your name 1,000 times a day. Why can't you just say ours just once?
Oh, wow.
She's a very, reserved and not a very out there girl. Yeah.
Well,
Naomi was great because she always talked about her agent. Always.
See, but like Sarah Jessica Parker, I interviewed her, I don't know, recently, and I've interviewed her before, but she never wanted to talk about Sex and the City. And I'm like, girl, that's why you're here. That's why you're here. You know, that's why we care, because we watch Sex and the City episode
after episode. Let's talk about your husband.
All right. Okay, so I had just quickly, Andre Leon Talley, tell that story, Michael.
Oh, I don't want to talk about it. I'm kidding. Okay. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. So this was early in my career, and I was in Paris at the Yohji Yamamoto show. I'll tell it quickly. And I see this tall guy. I mean, he's, you know, as I was telling Joy earlier, he just caught my attention because he was wearing a mink.
Okay.
It looked like a cape. I was studying it, and then I thought, he's wearing like a blanket. It just looked like this big square blanket, and it was fur. So I went up to him, and he's like a big guy. And I said, excuse me, sir. I'm looking up. I said, sir, who are you? Just like that. I went like, who are you? And he looked down at me, and I swear he said to me, he goes, child, who am I?
He probably said, child, child.
Do it, Joy. Exactly. And he's like, who am I? He says, what do you mean, who am I? Who are you? And I was like, well, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm Michael Quintanilla, and I'm with the LA Times, and you know, I'm new at covering fashion, but you're so striking, and I would love to write about you and what you're wearing. And he says, this? I said, yes. I said, what is it? He says, well, it's mink. And I said, I know. Oh my gosh, it's beautiful. He said, where did it come from? He said, it came from my bed. And I said, from your bed? From where? He says, from New York. I said, so you packed it? He said, no, child.
Uh-oh, we're losing him. Michael?
I said, oh, okay. And then we were talking, and
okay.
Yamamoto show, and he said, yes, this and that. And then it was nice after that, right? Because I guess
I'm missing some stuff.
We're missing.
Okay.
Audio is jumping all around.
Michael. Oh,
there he is.
Oh.
He grabs me by the hand, and we're walking backstage, and I'm like behind him, and he's walking really fast, right? So I'm like, I said, where are we going? And he says, and so as we're walking to where Mr. Yamamoto is, standing in the middle of a door jam, greeting his guest, it's like everyone moves away, like there's a parting because
Parting the seals.
yeah, because Andre Leon Talley is coming and I'm behind him and he's holding my hand and he goes up to Yoji and he bows and then Mr. Yamamoto bows and then they're talking and he's saying, "Oh, I just loved your show," and it was a beautiful show. And then he says, I want you to meet my friend, my new friend. And then he turns around and he goes, "What's your name?" And I said, "Michael Quintanilla." And I swear, Joy and Neal, I swear he said something like, "And this is my friend, Michael Quintanilla, Michael Quintanilla," whatever.
And so I can so see him doing that.
Or La Quinta, Michael La Quinta.
Oh my God.
Walks away. And then I'm just standing there saying hello to Mr. Yamamoto. And I think we were like bowing like 5 times. I didn't know when to stop, And it was wonderful.
Andre is my favorite person.
And then after that, I would, right? I mean, that was my meeting with him. And after that,
bar none.
He is.
And the best line in the September issue documentary, the best line in the whole 2-hour film is when he delivers in the conference room. And he's turning, and he's looking around and he goes, "It's a famine of beauty, a famine of beauty." And I'm like, curtains, because no one else will top that no matter what. He's brilliant. He's brilliant.
Well, you know what? If you get a chance to listen to his new book that's out, it's on Audible, and he narrates it. It's incredible.
I read the book, but now I'm going to have to listen to it.
Yes, because he tells the story, and only he can tell it, and it's pretty fabulous. Yes.
So he is my favorite person in fashion.
I can't wait to listen to it.
Okay, and I promised we do an hour, and I can't believe the hour's almost up. Can you believe that?
Thank you so much.
All right, well, so tell me, during this pandemic, everything that's going on, how do you find joy, and what are you doing to make that happen?
I'm dancing.
He's dancing.
Sing. Uh-huh.
I told you this the other day, Joy. I said, I've known you a long time, and I look at all the changes in your life that came like that.
Yeah.
And when I think about you, it makes me smile. So that brings me joy. And my dog, I've gotten very close to him. I have a rescue dog, and I've gotten very close to him through all of this, But he's real over me. Ooh, he's ready to.
He's over. I think mine are
nice to meet you. It's nice to meet you. I have to come to San Antonio or come to Houston, and Joy and I will take you out.
And Michael is a hell of a tour guide. I promise you. You will see a San Antonio like you've never seen it before.
Road trip.
Okay, so Michael, what are you doing to celebrate joy and bring yourself joy during this time?
I dance every day, Joy, and I work in my garden.
You dance.
Yes, and I work in my garden every day. Every day.
Every day.
I have a container garden. I was cleaning it out the other day and I counted all of the container pots in my backyard. My backyard is one big garden with a deck around it. 324 pots, container pots.
Wow.
Yeah, so I love the garden. I like to be outdoors. Yeah, 324 at last count.
Okay,
so
we need a road trip. Road trip to San Antonio.
Done.
We're gonna make that happen. Okay. Thank you both. Thank you. Love you both. Thank you so much. This is the Joy Hour. So thank you, everyone. See you next week.
Thank you, Joy.
Bye.
Michael.
Bye, Joy. Love you.
Bye. Love you too.